it's persistent in all of our lives. We're all going to be Pharisees at some point in time.
Definitely.
We all kind of calcify over. We go through these different seasons in our walk where sometimes we're, like when we meet a new believer, they're super on fire, and we always try to get a little heat off of that. And then after you've done that for a while, I always sense the new believer kind of starts to understand this process of change takes a long time, So I see some of these new believers like, well, they kind of go through a little bit of an arid place, like it's a little drier for them. They're getting tested, right. It's a valley, a little dry. And then from there, they start to get stronger, and they start to hear God's voice in the more subtle ways. That relationship, like you talked about, from being persistent on that journey, it reblooms like the seasons. Like, you go through a spring, a winter. These things are part of our walk. So part of our walk is going to be dealing with the inner Pharisee we all have. I believe that's why the Pharisees, like when I read the Gospels now, like especially since studying them a little more, and not just kind of like in the notes I was talking about people having that very subjective take on it. I think the Pharisees are there as I see people as taking on elements of spirit, right? Because you don't know, like not all the Pharisees were bad guys, right? Like there was, I think, Josephus who picked up Jesus's body, right? Like a couple of them were probably great. But we generalize the Pharisees because they are standing in, or they're representing a part of our hearts. They're representing a part of what we have to deal with and encounter as believers. That legalism, that selective outrage, when you go to.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think it stems like from what we struggle with and what we are victorious over, I would say. The stuff we find like, you struggle with that? That's the stuff we start getting legalistic about, I think. Because it's like, that's not a struggle for me, so then you start judging people in kind of a legalistic way over it. Meanwhile, you have a struggle that they may not have, and guess what? It's like the thorn in your eye or the log in your eye statement from Jesus, because we all got our issues.
And that keeps you humble. So that judgment and you see it starting to try and come out, and you're like, what's better than that? Mercy, compassion. And having mercy and compassion doesn't mean you're not being honest.
Yeah, you got to. We're still called to hold people accountable.
Right. It just means you handle that person in a way that's compassionate. You're not looking. There's no condescension in your thoughts. There's none of this. You're not divorcing them from your struggle. You see them walking with you on this path. They're your brothers.
And your motivation isn't judgment. It's like, I want what's best for you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not bringing this to you to just make you feel bad. Like, it's truly what's best for you.
Exactly. And people, that's when God moves through you. And so they're not sensing that carnal, like, do things my way, or this is the rule and you're messing. They feel God's embrace, and they feel that when I always hear, and Jesus says this several times to the Pharisees, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And when you read that, there's several translations. One of them I like the most is I desire knowledge of God, not sacrifice. And that really speaks to that inner Pharisee. It's like, well, the sacrifices were knowing what to do when you did wrong, speaking towards the law. But when you let God move through you in a form of mercy and compassion, and he's touching that other person using you, it's a very different interaction. It's not sacrifice. It's mercy. It's knowledge of God. It's God working through you. And like there's been so many times I've been in we find ourselves in those tough situations, and you're going to be tested. What do I say and how do I say it? Somebody's doing something, or there's an issue in my life, and there's no easy way. It's going to get messy, and it's going to be tough no matter what. And that's the time of prayer where you're asking knowledge of God. I need to know who God is in this circumstance, not who John is in this circumstance. Like me, I have no answers right now, and I don't know how this is going to pan out, so I'm stepping out in faith. And that's some of the issue with the inner Pharisees. He's like, well, here's a procedure. This is what you have to follow, and if you do this, you check your boxes, you're fine. And so God's letting us know that's not the key. It's an intimate relationship. It's powerful stuff.